Wonder, doubt, decide. A possible way through the labyrinth of information society. On examining the relationship between media content and reality, we are faced with the following question. Which information is real and which is only apparently real or fake? When considering our answer, we can focus on the starting points provided by philosophers. So what are the foundations of philosophical reflection in the information society? Through what processes does information come to us and become part of our lives? A more general definition is that information is a term related to knowledge, communication of knowledge, data, and facts. In some cases, it is identified with these in some form, knowledge, data, or news, while in other cases it is the object of these, communication, learning. This approach highlights the complexity of the substance of information. At the same time, two types of relationships should be highlighted. Information can be the subject of data, or it can represent the process itself. Thus, in what follows, we will look at how we can find information, how to process it, and how it becomes an element of our lives. The search for information implies curiosity, wonder, and attention. But selection is needed from the mass of information, and doubt is our tool. We need information in certain marginal situations when we have to make a decision and choose between options. In the following, we will examine this process. The cave allegory is an often cited example from classical Greek philosophy. How can we interpret the allegory by focusing on the concept of information? Is it the assimilation of tools, techniques, and technology into everyday life in a way that we do not notice its presence? The question is about the distinction between appearance and reality. It is a question of what our perceptions are and how we differentiate between the phenomena of the natural world around us. As the origin of philosophy, Jaspers first mentions wonder, which is linked to the Greek philosophy and which primarily means wonder at the world, although Jaspers does not quote Plato's cave metaphor. The state of wonder is explained by Jaspers relying on Plato in this way. Our eyes gave us the sight of the stars, the sun, and the firmament. This impelled us to examine the universe, whence grew philosophy, the greatest good conferred upon mortals by the gods. We are interested in the world, that is, the universe, and we wonder about it. In the world of information, perhaps something similar happens. For example, a Google search is of this type. Although the association of the universe and the search engine may seem an exaggeration, it can be understood as a comprehensive way of looking for information, with the objective of showing everything. We search for something, and a simple quest gives us hundreds of thousands of answers in a fraction of a second. But instead of looking at the whole of nature, we are looking for the information that is produced and available. What do we do with so many answers? How do we choose the right answer? This wonder is also an astonishment. We are faced with a universe of knowledge. If we cannot find the exact data we are looking for, we feel completely lost. Beyond the universe of information, Jasper's reference to Aristotle is at least as intriguing in its approach to our analysis as Plato's. For it is owing to their wonder that men both now begin and at first began to philosophize. They wondered originally at the obvious difficulties, then advanced little by little and stated the difficulties about the greater matters, for example, about the phenomena of the moon, and those of the sun and of the stars, and about the genesis of the universe. Here, then, we wonder not about information itself, but about the process of acquiring information, the multiplicity of ways in which information is acquired, and how information is acquired in the first place. What turns into information, and what is its origin? From what does the order of knowledge emerge, and what remains trapped in the chaos of ignorance? According to Jaspers, there is another important feature of this approach, namely the absence of interest. There is a sincere, disinterested questioning in wonder, from which we expect no benefit. We only want knowledge for its own sake, as understanding in itself provides an inner satisfaction, and the wish to know is for the sake of knowing. This dimension of understanding is difficult for a man of modernity to grasp. The equivalence of knowledge and power attributed to Francis Bacon deprives us of this insight. Nowadays, information is said to be valuable, a valuable resource, and whoever owns information is in a winning position. So, I want knowledge for power. I benefit from it. The Google query has this trait behind it, and when no right answer is found, it leads to frustration. Yet, the question of what turns something into information is left unanswered. Is it exhausted in its usability alone, a pragmatic principle, or is there a more complex background? Is it the will to gain power for the sake of power itself, or is it a manifestation of something else, and therefore an apparent phenomenon? The modern formulation of doubt is provided by Descartes. The idea of a world pervaded by an evil demon is a popular topos in the digital world. The apotheosis of the "there is an all-encompassing mind of which we are but toys" theory, which was achieved in the film The Matrix, but that's not what we are referring to here. Doubt, as an act, is basically the loading of a principle, a truth, or a proposition, that is, the effort to show what a proposition can stand or under what circumstances it can be considered valid. This test, like Newtonian physics, experiments with an idea, information, a process of acquiring information, and subjects it to a pressure, a test by which its tenability can be determined. Sticking with the example of the previous Google search, we can see a wealth of information and answers appearing in a short period of time. However, the information bits often contradict not only our expectations, but also each other. In what way, then, can I consider this information valid? Radical doubt means that if anything can appear differently and change its essence, then it can be dismissed as not a certainty. However, such a setting aside of knowledge, information, may lead me to the certainty of giving up this claim. As Jaspers puts it, once wonder has overwhelmed us with knowledge, we must realize that it is often contradictory and we should revise it. We might even say that we are overwhelmed by the world of information, so we must revise what we can take for granted. The pressure of what is necessarily true knowledge might be called the excess of doubt. How do we test the information we gain from a Google search? If the previous round of wonder is the entire universe, then this round is the ego cogito. How do I gain certainty about myself and the world? The result of this systematic doubt and criticism is the grounding of the thinker or seeker. A common objection to Descartes was the charge of solipsism. I think that doubting and grounding is not only the work of the individual. We can also start from the community by reversing the process of observation. It is not only the individual who can adequately investigate all knowledge. There are many ingredients missing: lack of time, preparation, or adequate resources. Traditionally, the media has been the very medium that has done this work of doubt and critique. Social media, conceptually, comes even closer to this idea. The reality would be one of mutual affirmation in which the positive gifts of the community could be lived out and the temptation to enclose overcome. In other words, there should not only be an established identity of ego cogito, but also a stepping out of the comfort zone and openness to the other. Relying on Jaspers, we will try to use reflections from the existential philosophy in the third round. The questions are: what is our situation at the moment? What is our involvement in the search for information? To what extent can the information in question affect our own lives? This superficial accusation is perhaps most often made about information. It is in a world of simulacra, or even Platonic appearances, and thus reflection is completely futile. But our basic hypothesis is that the statement carries information that could very easily touch the very foundations of our lives. The following trajectory emerges before us. What is this? The state of wonder. What is the basis of my certainty? The state of doubt. Where is my position, my state in this world? The state of experiencing our limits. For not only can I make the statement, "It is dark," but I can also receive a diagnosis. You suffer from a disease. Or receive such information about our loved ones. What does information mean in this context? The timing of the information and how it relates to my life is also relevant. Getting the right information at the right time. Given information means given opportunity with no repetition. Our temporality, therefore, confronts us with a flood of information from which we inevitably have to choose. In fact, this extension of information directs our attention to communication, and here we continue to follow Jasper's line of thought. Just as the constructive role of community was shown in the analysis of doubt, so can communication offer itself as a lifeline from being left to ourselves. The context we arrive at can be summarized as follows. 1. Data is transformed into information. Thus, information processing is itself a knowledge by which a fact is given some kind of intelligibility. And 2, information is transmitted in communication in a specific medium. Information in itself means nothing if it is not shared and does not become the speech of the community. The first point is divided into 3 parts. We can say that it is through wonder that information enters our horizon. Part of the processing is critical revision and doubt. Finally, there is data that we experience as truly internal, that speaks to the givenness of our own lives. The second point actually creates a context for accessing, processing, and interiorizing information. All this presupposes the existence of communication, just as communication presupposes content. i.e. data or information. What we ask is, what is the condition of possibility for the dynamic relationship between information and communication conceived in this way? How is it possible to find the unique in the flood of information? How is it possible to introduce the personal, the ipseity, into the uniformitized data set? Or how can we realize our true selves in this world?